Hi there, I'm Machine Pun Kelly, aka MPK, and today I want to continue a series. Plyler Doe, 1982, was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case that affirmed the 14th Amendment's equal protection and due process rights for undocumented immigrant children, specifically ensuring their access to public education. The 1970s saw a significant increase in immigration from Mexico to the U.S., driven by economic opportunities and political instability. Many undocumented immigrants settled in states like Texas, where they faced discrimination and limited access to public services. Public education was a flashpoint, as states grappled with the costs of educating growing numbers of immigrant children, including those without legal status. Anti-immigrant sentiment fueled policies targeting undocumented families, often portraying them as a burden on public resources. In 1975, Texas passed a law allowing public schools to deny enrollment to undocumented children or charge them tuition, a policy rooted in fiscal concerns but criticized as discriminatory. The Tyler Independent School District in Texas implemented the state law charging undocumented students $1,000 in annual tuition, a prohibitive cost for many low-income immigrant families. This led to numerous children being excluded from public schools, prompting legal challenges from affected families and advocates. The parties involved were James Plyler, superintendent of the Tyler Independent School District, representing the school district and the state's enforcement of the Texas law, and Doe, a pseudonym for a group of undocumented Mexican children and their families who challenged the Texas law after being denied free public education. In 1977, a group of undocumented children in Tyler, Texas, were barred from attending public schools unless they paid tuition. The law allowed schools to exclude undocumented students or require payment, arguing that such children were not legally entitled to public benefits. The affected families, represented by the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, filed a class-action lawsuit in federal court, arguing that the Texas law violated the 14th Amendment's equal protection and due process clauses by discriminating against undocumented children and denying them access to education. The U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Texas ruled in favor of the plaintiffs in 1978, finding the law unconstitutional. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed, and Texas appealed to the Supreme Court. Did Texas's law denying free public education to undocumented children violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause by discriminating against them based on immigration status? Did the exclusion of undocumented children from public education deprive them of due process under the 14th Amendment by denying a fundamental interest without adequate justification?
The Supreme Court struck down the Texas law, ruling that denying undocumented children access to free public education violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The court applied a heightened scrutiny standard, intermediate scrutiny, to the law, requiring Texas to show that the policy furthered a substantial state interest. The court found no evidence that excluding undocumented children saved significant costs or protected educational quality. Instead, the law imposed a lifetime hardship on children who were not responsible for their immigration status by denying them education, a critical tool for social and economic mobility. While the majority opinion focused on equal protection, it implicitly recognized due process protections by affirming that undocumented children, as persons within U.S. jurisdiction, could not be arbitrarily deprived of fundamental opportunities like education without a compelling justification. Education, while not a fundamental right, is essential for individual development and societal participation, making its denial particularly harmful. The law unfairly targeted a vulnerable group, creating a discriminatory classification based on immigration status. Texas's fiscal arguments were unpersuasive, as the costs of educating undocumented children were minimal compared to the long-term societal costs of an uneducated underclass. Key quote: "If the state is to deny a discrete group of innocent children the free public education that it offers to other children residing within its borders, that denial must be justified by a showing that it furthers some substantial state interest. No such showing has been made." The dissenting justices argued that the court overstepped by applying heightened scrutiny, as undocumented immigrants were not a protected class. They believed states should have discretion to allocate resources and that education was not a constitutional right. The Texas law was declared unconstitutional, and undocumented children were granted equal access to free public education nationwide.
Plyler v. Doe reaffirmed that undocumented immigrants, including children, are persons entitled to equal protection and due process under the 14th Amendment, building on precedents like Yick Wo v. Hopkins, 1886, and Wong Wing v. United States, 1896. It established that discrimination based on immigration status requires a substantial state interest, setting a precedent for heightened scrutiny in cases involving vulnerable groups. The court recognized education's unique role in enabling social mobility and civic participation, making its denial to children particularly egregious. This elevated education's status in constitutional law, though it stopped short of declaring it a fundamental right. The ruling emphasized the innocence of undocumented children who cannot control their parents' immigration decisions, influencing later cases protecting vulnerable populations. Plyler curbed states' ability to exclude undocumented immigrants from public benefits without strong justification, reinforcing federal authority over immigration policy while protecting individual rights. The decision required Texas and other states to provide free public education to undocumented children, benefiting thousands of students who had been excluded or faced tuition barriers. Schools nationwide adjusted policies to comply, integrating undocumented children into classrooms. The ruling sparked backlash in some communities, with critics arguing it encouraged illegal immigration, but it also galvanized advocacy for immigrant rights. Plyler remains a cornerstone of immigration and education law, cited in cases involving access to public benefits for non-citizens, such as Zadvydas v. Davis, 2001, on detention rights and challenges to state laws targeting immigrants, e.g., Arizona's SB 1070. It influenced policies like the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA program, which protects undocumented youth by emphasizing the societal value of integrating young immigrants. The case shaped educational equity, ensuring that millions of undocumented children could access K-12 education, contributing to their economic and social integration. In 2025, Plyler is frequently invoked in debates over immigrant access to education and public services, especially amid policies targeting undocumented populations, such as mass deportation proposals. Advocates cite it to defend school access for migrant children, while critics argue it strains public resources. Social media posts highlight Plyler's role in protecting undocumented children, though some question its applicability to higher education or other benefits where its precedent is less clear. Recent legal challenges to state policies, such as tuition restrictions for undocumented college students, often reference Plyler. Narrow scope. The ruling applied only to K-12 education, leaving unresolved questions about undocumented immigrants' access to higher education, healthcare, or other benefits. States can still impose restrictions in these areas, as seen in debates over in-state tuition for undocumented students. Fiscal tensions. Critics argue that Plyler places financial burdens on states, especially in high immigration areas, a concern echoed in the dissent and ongoing policy debates. Modern challenges. The case's protections are less effective against federal policies, e.g., immigration enforcement in schools, or state workarounds, like voter ID laws that indirectly affect undocumented families. its reliance on heightened scrutiny is also vulnerable to reinterpretation by more conservative courts. Conclusion. Plyler-Verdot, 1982, arose from Texas's attempt to deny undocumented children free public education, a policy rooted in anti-immigrant sentiment and fiscal concerns. The Supreme Court's 5-4 ruling struck down the law, affirming that undocumented children are entitled to equal protection and due process under the 14th Amendment, ensuring their access to K-12 education. The decision underscored education's critical role and set a precedent for protecting vulnerable non-citizens while sparking ongoing debates about immigration and public resources. Its legacy endures in education and immigrant rights law, shaping policies for millions of undocumented youth. Once again, I'm Machine Pun Kelly, aka MPK. Thanks for watching. If you want to watch the next chapter, remember to click like and subscribe, and bookmark the Supreme Court playlist to keep up with all the videos in this series.